we have some large news that, there's a level of news that we would have just saved for next week when we talked about the New York Yankees and the AL East preview. But this Gerrit Cole news is different than the Gerrit Cole news we got exactly a year ago. And that is that Gerrit Cole, I think, has already had Tommy John, or is about to. I think it's already in the past. And so he will not be pitching in 2025. Jake, I know you already wrote about this. You were at Yankees camp. Kind of how this information got disseminated timing wise was a little bit goofy, but it's out there. It was kind of, we were all bracing for it for several days, and now it is true, where this guy who's been one of the best and most durable pitchers over the last decade will not be pitching at all in 2025.
3 things on this planet are undefeated: Father Time, Mother Nature, and Uncle Tommy John. It comes for all of us at one point or another. And Gerrit Cole, who had dodged the elbow ligament capitulation for quite a while, it was about time. You're right. The dissemination of this was very bizarre. He made his first spring training start 2 weeks ago and was good and said he felt great. Afterwards, the numbers were good. Then he pitched against the Twins last week. It was a catastrophe. He got obliterated. Then over the weekend, he said, my elbow hurts. Got imaging, got a second opinion. As is always the case, the second opinion is usually the same as the first opinion. And it was announced on Monday that Gerrit Cole needed reconstructive elbow surgery. Good old Tommy John. He will be out for the entire year. Now, I think it's worth just noting how incredible it is that he has not needed it yet. Players who throw as hard as Gerrit Cole does for as long as he was throwing that hard, they get this. They get this. It is a part of doing business. That is kind of how players think about it. It is unfortunate. It is somewhat dystopic to say, hey, if you want to be a big league pitcher, like, we're going to have to cut into your arm at some point. But that is the fact. And it is not exactly surprising that Gerrit Cole needed Tommy John surgery, considering that a year ago, he was having elbow discomfort. He rested it. He recovered from it. He pitched well and looked like Gerrit Cole down the stretch. But these things build up over time, right? It is not as simple as like, it's torn and you can't pitch and you're fully healthy. This is not a binary, right? There's kind of a spectrum of where the elbow is at. And it was kind of clear, given where he was at last year, that this was probably coming down the road at some point.
Yeah, and sometimes, right, unfortunately, we do see guys like literally blow out and it's like, I can't, like, you are immediately done pitching. Sometimes it seems to be what happened with Cole, where he was still throwing hard against the Twins as bad as he looked, right? It's not like sometimes it happens and then, oh my God, he's throwing 88 miles an hour and it's over. Sometimes it's in the recovery. It's in how you feel the next day. There's a lot, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different ways that this can kind of reveal itself. And unfortunately for him, this is, I mean, it's just so brutal. And you mentioned, I just think back to the fact that we've had these same feelings and conversations and fears a year ago, and that he managed to avoid it, come back, pitch as well as he did. It wasn't perfect. You know, he had a 3-4 in the regular season. I know a lot of people think about how his season ended in the World Series with that catastrophic 5th inning. Well, let's also remember how he was pitching in the 4 innings before then. You know, he was amazing. Like, that was Gerrit Cole. That's why you give him, this amazing contract and you have him on your team so that he can pitch like that in the World Series in a must-win game. And yes, of course, by the end, no one remembers that part because of everything that happened in the 5th. But Gerrit Cole, the pitcher, somehow had managed to avoid this, had rested and rehabbed it to the point where he could contribute to a team that went to the World Series. And now he will not be able to do that for a Yankees team that is obviously still very focused on getting back to and winning a World Series.
Gerrit Cole getting hurt, like, his Instagram post was the first time in a long time where I felt actively bad for the Yankees, which was a very difficult thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just not a feeling that people around baseball often have. But just the idea that, he's here to win this ring for this team, and the window is now dwindling where he has 3 more years to accomplish this once he gets back. And the idea that the Judge Cole era very well could end without a championship for the Yankees is really significant. I mean, if you're a hater, it's funny. If you're a lover, it's a bummer. And if you're us, you're just enthralled by that.
Yeah. I think too, you know, you think, okay, and you mentioned the post, of course, every guy that has Tommy John, sorry, I'll come back stronger than ever. And maybe that's true, right? We saw Justin Verlander come back at age 39 after Tommy John and win a Cy Young. Like and when we're talking about pitchers at this level, it would not surprise me if Gerrit Cole comes back and is awesome again. But we'll be talking about his, he'll be basically, he's turning 35 this September, so he'll be turning 36 next September, which hopefully by September 2026, he is back on the mound. But full Tommy John is with this timing. This is also important when we talk about the timing. It's different for everybody, but we've talked recently about the difference between full Tommy John, which is the full reconstruction, versus the internal brace surgery, which guys like Lucas Giolito and Spencer Strider got early last season, and those guys are already expected to come back in the early part of this year, whereas Shane Bieber, who had Tommy John in April of last year, full Tommy John, like he's not expected back until July. So I'm not expecting Gerrit Cole to be pitching for the Yankees before close to, the All-Star break of 2026. But the point is for this year, right now, we can save the how are they going to replace him for the AL East preview. We'll talk about the Yankees. We can save that conversation for later. But is there anything else for Cole specifically in his career that you kind of want to get at as we because this is the other thing we talk about. Feel like we just adore Gerrit Cole. Like he has been one of my favorite Yankees since he's been there. He's extremely honest, extremely insightful. It's just a different thinker. He's one of the guys whose post-game interviews are genuinely compelling because of the way that he thinks about the game and the degree to which he is willing to talk about it. And so that just sucks. And I know that the way I'm sure he will still be valuable to the Yankees in some ways. I know Clark Schmidt had a quote being like, great, we just have another pitching coach now for 2025 because it's not like Gerrit Cole. I mean, I'm sure he will be away for he's going to have to be away for some degree. I wouldn't expect him to like be on the road all the time in the early stages of this rehab, but he'll be around and he'll still be in some sort of presence. But, if the Yankees get back to the postseason again, no matter who's on that team, we're going to be thinking like, man, there's no Gerrit Cole, and that's going to be a really. And we were already thinking that when this first happened a year ago, but obviously by the time we got to October, we didn't have to worry about it. Now we will. They will not have him this postseason if they get there.
Baseball's more interesting when Gerrit Cole is in it. It's that simple to me, right? Yep. I am bummed for him and for the team, and for all of us who like thinking about him and like watching him pitch. Also fascinating is like if he never throws another pitch, is this a Hall of Famer? Like he will throw another pitch almost certainly, but just thinking about his resume and his legacy is so much of that is like tied up in durability that he's gotten to, I think, 150 wins. He will never get to 300, which is impossible now. But if he totally could get to 200 or even 215, like. Thinking about Gerrit Cole's legacy now, as we're about to be without him for a year and a half, I'm very interested in kind of how we look back.
Dude, this is a guy who did finally get that Cy Young in 2023 after he probably deserved it in 2019, finished second in 2021, finished top 5 3 other years. Like, he's going to have a pretty good case among the modern pitchers where we're not as concerned about the counting stats. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's able to add to at that point. And the Yankees now, we'll talk about how they replace him, but what is also relevant, I don't want to dig too much into the contract stuff, but yeah, he's still making $36 million for the next 4 seasons. And that is a lot of money to be paying someone that's not playing. They obviously have a few of those guys right now, which is part of the Yankees' issues. And as Brian Cashman already said, like, we're probably not going external because of the luxury tax implications. Well, that's why you run into some issues if you're paying $50 million plus to players that are not playing right now. That is a challenge for the Yankees right now. Again, no one feels bad for them, obviously, but that is certainly an interesting issue for the Yankees. But that is a discussion for the AL East preview.